Warning: this video is for educational purposes only and is not intended to be entertaining. Everything you're about to see is basically all about mold and the dangers of mold. Do not ingest mold, do not let anyone you know ingest mold, and if you have a granny, keep that mold away from her snatch.
Stay the fuck out!
For this episode of our research, I'll be covering everything about the E-001 bioweapon known as Eveline from Resident Evil 7. I'll be discussing her practical application, military applications, the stages of the Mutamycete infection, and the mutant variants. I will also cover the vaccines, serums, and cures, as well as the contingency methods for dealing with such an outbreak like the one seen at the Bakers. I will only be stating the facts found within the game, so if I can't find a video, document, or any other form of evidence to explain something, then I won't be stating it as fact. I've done a thorough sweep of this entire game to deliver my best understanding of this bioweapon, from a game that seems to be riddled with plot holes and inconsistencies. I hope this video can debunk or explain away some of the game's oversights. This video is just part 1 of a 3-part Conspiracy series research project created to uncover the truth about Ethan Winters. So, make sure to subscribe to this channel to catch part 2 and 3 in the coming days, and if you enjoy content like this, become a member of the R-Retards by joining the Mr. T-Virus Patreon. Which reminds me, thank you Kyle Messing, Kiera Messing, E13, and Marco DiMartino for supporting the channel. Now let's begin. The E-Series bioweapon, E-001, also known as Eveline, is the 5th series iteration of this bioweapon following the failed A through D series experiments. The goal here was to create a bioweapon that could neutralize enemies without the need for combat. Now it's unclear if Tensu is the company that created the E-Series, but they certainly are the ones supplying the serum and necrotoxins for it, as seen by these fetus containers throughout the game. Many unknown organizations are at play in this game, and it's never explicitly stated, but it appears that Tensu and the Connections are the same organization, or at least working with one another, and they both had a hand in the creation of Eveline. The Connections are a previously unknown rival company of Umbrella's with a bioweapons division that got its start working with the Hive Host Capture Force, Albert Wesker's former group that helped him steal the T. Veronica virus from Umbrella back in '98. And according to this R&D report, by 2000, the Connections, with help from HCF, genetically modified some fungus and made people jizz on it, cultivating it for 38 to 40 weeks until it was a fungus fetus that would develop into a child. This discovery led to the formation of the NextBAS project, Next Generation Experimental Battlefield Superiority. The goal here was to create a bioweapon that they could toss into conflict zones or communities and completely destabilize the enemy from within, because this moldy kid has the ability to disarm populations with their mind control powers, all thanks to the parasitic mold she secretes, known as the Mutamycete. But more on that ability later.
They're mine now.
What?
Now, it is never really explained in the R&D reports how exactly she can infect someone. She appears to have various methods of mutamycete dispersal, either through direct skin contact, like we see with the Bakers, or the black shit she vomits or secretes infects you, like we see with Eveline's handlers, Alan Droney and Mia Winters. But, as we see with the other crew members on board the Annabelle, and with Ethan Winters, they appear to be infected without ever coming into contact with her, which leads me to believe that there are fungal spores contaminating the air. Now, the R&D documents don't mention this method of transmission, but this one does talk about Eveline's mind control powers using pheromones to communicate with the mycelia being the fungal cells that take over an organism. The vector, being Eveline, has an ability similar to auto-inducing pheromones used for quorum sensing. Just like bacteria in real life, she can communicate between mold colonies and species.
What? What are you?
Oh yeah, and one more method of transmission. You can get infected by ingesting the mold, but I don't know why you would ever do that. Eveline uses the theme of family as the form of her mind control.
And I want you to be my mommy.
Okay, Evie. I'll be your mommy. Just come back with me.
This theme was never intended though, and researchers believe she chose this because of the lack of parental figures in her quarantine upbringing.
I want to live at the lab anymore. I want a house.
And the fact that nobody loves her.
that little bitch.
We learn from the R&D reports that almost immediately after infection, the subject begins to see images of Eveline and even hear her voice, though she is inaudible and in fact not there.
I need you to do something for me.
Phantom Eveline will appear as a young girl desiring companionship or assistance before making extreme demands like self-mutilation or attacks on other people. We can see this happen to Jack and Marguerite Baker almost immediately in the Daughters DLC. Now, people believe the following R&D report on the stages of infection completely contradicts everything I just told you, stating that the initial infection is a slow process and is not immediate at all, as seen with the Bakers. But what people are failing to realize is that this document is referring to the molded creature's stages of infection, in which the entire host's body transforms into mycelia, as well as becoming in tune with Eveline's will. Now for the chosen hosts hallucinating, the ones who will play a role as her family, the early stages of hallucinations don't last very long. As we see in the Daughters DLC, after one night of psychotic torture and self-mutilation, the entire family has forgotten everything by the next day.
Oh, now this is how you hurt somebody. Well, now look who has decided to join us.
You okay, dear? There was a lot of excitement from that storm last night.
I'm fine.
Though she can control them immediately, the control doesn't last long.
Stay away! Don't touch her! Don't hurt my family!
She doesn't achieve complete control until a significant portion of the brain is invaded with fungus. At this point, the host has become in tune with Eveline. There is an ending screen for Daughters that suggests that her mind control is strongest at night, by the nights being marked by the family's murderous feasts, but this is never documented on or stated in the game. And another inconsistency I've seen fans take issue with is the use of the term vomit by Eveline's handlers when speaking about her Mutamycete mess.
How's it going?
She's vomiting. Far more in excess of her body mass.
In the game, we hear about her ability to vomit, but it's never referred to as vomit in any documents. And nowhere in the game do we witness her vomiting Mutamycete. We see Eveline secrete the Mutamycete in this scene, but it's not vomiting. Now, this is a minor detail that's so inconsequential, its exclusion shouldn't even be an issue, but in my efforts to be as thorough as possible, I found the evidence. In the main game, there are 0 files that document Eveline's bulimia. I even went through the fine print text flashing by in the credit screens. I did find some other important stuff, but nothing on vomit. And that's when I realized that this inconsistency was brought to my attention by people who didn't even bother to play the DLCs. That's right, in the Not a Hero DLC, I came across this document just sitting out in the open that confirms Eveline does in fact throw up. In fact, she threw up on August 26, 2016. What do you want me to prove next? That she can poop? Anyway, because of this effort to prove she can vomit, I discovered the other facts hidden within the fine print of the ending credits. Documents that heavily contradict statements from previous research files, like how the R&D report 1 states that the E-series is perfected, when we all obviously could tell it is most certainly not perfected. The credits tell us that the product is mentally and physically unstable, requiring maintenance and injections of stabilizers. Also, that the company never got past 6 months of trial testing because the product became too dangerous for further observations. Another concern among fans was the mutation of Deputy Dave's severed head that Ethan finds in the fridge. Nowhere in the game does it state that the dead can be infected or even turn, but another find in the ending credits clears this up, stating there is an indication that mold could revive the recently deceased. However, this is yet to be tested. Deputy Dave was only dead a couple hours before Lucas cut his head off, so I believe the reanimation process was interrupted at that moment, halting the spread of the mycelia to the rest of Dave's body. If this process hadn't been interrupted, this would have turned Dave into a creature known as the Molded. Eveline can use her Mutamycete infection to create friends by using the fungal filaments in the mycelia to form superorganisms. Moldy creatures, appropriately named mold, are molded, with variants like fat molded and white molded. Seriously, who's naming these guys? Is it the same person who named the liquors liquors?
I have no idea. It's something new.
Fat molded. The molded are smart enough to protect themselves and not travel into certain areas without being invited. The fatty boom booms can vomit toxic fluids, while the little ones are agile and can cling to walls. As for the white molded, there is very little to no information about their creation. I assume they were created late in the game's timeline, as they are only found around the lab, and Ethan never crosses paths with them. The lard asses can vomit toxic fluids and breed the 001As, the white mold version of crabs. As for the 002s, these guys are just like the black molded, but they're inherently racist because of their white privilege. All of these variants are impervious to standard weapons and can only be killed with anti-regeneration ammunition.
Those ramrods should allow you to take down the new white mold variants.
Good.
Oh yeah, and I guess I forgot to mention that everyone infected with the Mutamycete gains Wolverine powers. The infected can mutilate their bodies, sever their limbs, reattach their limbs, straight up eat a bullet, and survive. But even with these abilities, molded show signs of caution, protecting their heads, leading me to believe that they can in fact die, whereas the bakers show no signs of self-preservation. Whether an infected person becomes a molded or a family member is determined by Eveline, and it appears that the infection rates vary depending on what the individual has been selected for. Now, just to let you know, none of this is documented, but it's clearly something that does occur.
Welcome to the family, son.
Mia and the Bakers are by far the oldest victims of Eveline's, meaning they should all be in tune or in late stages of infection. But throughout the game, we see that Zoe and Mia are still able to resist Eveline's influence.
I can hear her. I can feel her clawing her way back inside of me. Get out!
And then we see people like this cop, Deputy, start molding within hours. As for the regenerative abilities, I don't recall ever seeing the molded regrow any limbs, but the document does state that they can, and we do see some with enhanced limbs and elastic limbs, and Dave's head sorta healed, so add it to the list of abilities. Moving on, we see that Ethan encounters some giant-ass bugs, meaning that the E-Series doesn't just infect humans. Now, a lot of fans have serious issue with the existence of these bugs, claiming that they're one of the game's biggest mistakes, violating the game's own set of rules, and I almost agreed with them for a second, seeing how there are 0 documents in the game reporting on the big bugs, the big bug nests, or even the flies coming out of Marguerite's nasty granny snatch.
Don't leave, Sheriff! Stay and visit!
And I couldn't find any in-game explanation for these creatures, but I did find in the ending credits that the E-Series can in fact infect its environments, mutating plants, and promoting plant growth of a highly toxic psychotropic mold, the ingestion of which causes insanity. Now this statement, combined with the origin of the Next Bass project, which was created with the help of HCF, completely explains the existence of these bugs. This vicariant mold fungus, the Mutamycete, was developed with help from HCF, the same HCF that stole the T. Veronica virus, a virus that used ant colony hive minds as its form of mind control. Now, it's never stated in the game how the discovery came about. I'm just putting the pieces together. But in the real world, there is a hyperfungal parasite known as the zombie ant mushroom that hijacks ant brains and forces the ant to move to a more suitable environment to propagate its fungal spores. Again, this is my own theory, but I believe either intentionally or accidentally, HCF and whatever organization they were working with may have tested T. Veronica on infected ants, or tested the fungus on T. Veronica ants. Either way, they discovered this new mold that they later spliced with a human, spawning this new breed of hyperparasitic fungus, which gave birth to the E-Series 14 years later. So, with this theory of mine, and this document stating that these plants can be infected and ingested, I completely accept the existence of infected bugs and insects, even the other creatures in the swamp.
I just got done dealing with your mom and her fucking bugs. Wish you could have warned me.
Sorry about that.
Now I think I've covered everything Evie can do. Let's talk about Tensu and the connections, proper care and handling of the E-Series 001. According to the fine print credit text, the product is unstable, requiring regular injections of stabilizers. If these injections are skipped, the product will age rapidly, 25 times the normal rate. This is because Eveline was genetically modified to be a 10-year-old girl and stay a 10-year-old girl until deployment.
Oh, she's so young.
How's the other guest?
Sleeping, poor thing.
The product should ship with a minimum of 2 handlers, each equipped with serum, immunizing them to the product's mental control. Okay, wait. This is telling us that Alan and Mia had serum on the ready? Then how did this whole mess happen? Maybe Alan is immune to her control, or maybe not enough testing was done and Alan got the dosage wrong. We see from the lab photos that the E-Necrotoxin's dosage test led to vomiting after 5 minutes, death after 10 minutes, and calcification after 12 minutes. We see Alan go through the vomiting and death, and we see that the E-Necrotoxin container has been tampered with. Maybe Alan did fuck up his dosage, and it was just a coincidence that he died after calling Evie a bitch. Talk about karma.
That little bitch.
And with the cures and serums is where this game really gets confusing. As far as I know, there are 4 ways to combat E-Series control and infection. There is a serum created by running blank on Eveline's tissue samples. Yeah, let's just go with tests. Anyway, Zoe creates this serum by putting a D-Series head and a D-Series arm into a juicer without any E-Series tissue samples.
So can make the serum. What's next?
There's a boat outside. We'll take it through the swamp. But none of us will get very far without the serum.
And though these ingredients are listed on the Tensu case to create the serum, the conflicting documents are never cleared up. My personal theory is that they discovered the serum off Eveline's tissue and later found that the D-Series ingredients would work as well. Administering this serum to an infected subject will cause the mycelia to calcify. If the subject's cells are largely invaded, the serum will be fatal, so the treatment window is small. Now, my other theory on this serum is that Zoe is dumb. She's a backwoods hillbilly, not a scientist.
It was foolish thinking I could escape.
But Zoe,
Go! Both of you just go!
And she just got lucky that she didn't make the correct serum that would ultimately kill her.
please,
Zoe?
Evie. Oh,
Zoe? Zoe!
But if this isn't the real serum, then why did it work on Jack? Spoilers, it didn't. And my reasoning for that is, Jack was trying to kill Ethan because Eveline wanted to replace him as her new daddy.
Now she says he will be her father. No. I will find him, and I will make him suffer.
Eveline coincidentally stepped in and put a stop to it, just like she put a stop to Zoe later on. This serum is trash. Just look at what happened to Mia. After she takes it, she goes back to being a homicidal maniac.
Wait, what are you doing? What are you doing?
saving your life.
When the document clearly states that the window is small and will kill her. But I have a theory on this as well. I believe Mia had some form of serum before or during the initial outbreak, possibly prolonging or suppressing the invasion of cells. Next up we have E-Necrotoxin, made by combining E-Series tissue samples with an unspecified series fetus. This container sucks the baby juices out and spits out a single dose injector of E-Necrotoxin. And, as usual, it doesn't do shit. I know Tensu sounds Japanese, but I'm starting to think this is a Chinese company. Ethan uses this compound on Eveline, and for a second, it seems to work. She melts away, but then comes back even worse. It isn't until she's fired upon with anti-regen rounds that she actually dies. Next, we have whatever suppressants Lucas is on.
You'll make that serum? You're gonna have to come through me.
The connections freed Lucas from Eveline's mind control to get him to monitor Eveline's progress. Lucas retains his Wolverine powers and was already a homicidal maniac to begin with, so Eveline never notices anything out of the ordinary, making this the first real drug to actually work against the E-Series. And finally, from the End of Zoe DLC, we learn about Blue Umbrella's anti-infective synthesizing station that can create a cure that actually works, and it brings Zoe back from calcification.
Wake up, Zoe!
Joe, what happened to her? Are you okay?
I'm fine, don't you worry about me.
Oh yeah, and speaking of Venda Zoe, we discover that Jack Baker didn't die from that serum injection, which is no surprise there. Zoe just wasted perfectly good fetus parts. We learn from Blue Umbrella's documents that Jack's cells exhibit extraordinary resilience to physical and chemical damage. My guess is that this serum strengthened him, sorta like how a wrong dose of antibiotics can create superbugs resistant to further antibiotics. And speaking of superbugs, his body is now made up of mold fused with swamp critters. I assume he has this form because his body has reached its hayflick limit, meaning his cells have hit the max amount of times his body can regenerate or reproduce tissue. So he had to find parts elsewhere. And I know I didn't touch on the physical transformation of the Bakers. There is a document in the lab talking about a complete infection stage and how the mutations differ from host to host, but again, I believe this document is about the molded and not the infected members assigned to a role.
Oh boy.
So this is what it feels like.
As far as I know, there are no documents on mutation like this because it's never been witnessed before. There are no photos, files, or videos documenting anything like we see with the Bakers. Marguerite grows a nasty gnat snatch and gets elongated limbs. Jack turns into a pile of shit, and Lucas becomes some acid-spitting creature, and no similarities between either of them. Remember, the ending credit documents suggest that this has never been field tested before, so I believe these mutations have never been observed until this event. And that's it. I think I've covered everything there is to cover about this funky fungus. I hope this video can clear things up and settle some of the issues people have with this game. If you enjoyed this video and want to get notified for when part 2 of Conspiracy series is uploaded, hit that subscriber button and click that bell icon. Also, make sure to check out my Twitch and Patreon page to further support the channel. Thanks. Bye.